Morning, everyone, and good afternoon. Welcome to our second session for today. And in this session, we'll talk about how lean teams can accelerate results by data automation and create a data platform very quickly. With us here, we have Yuda, EVP of Data at Quadpay, and my name is Karen. I'm Product Marketing Manager at Snaplogic. As you saw earlier in our keynotes and the various keynotes, there's been, a core theme. Connecting the data across organization remains a challenge for most companies. And as you have heard in Advanced and Born report that we commissioned recently, we have interviewed 500 IT leaders in North America and Europe. And we found that companies have an average of 115 applications across the organization, leading to data being buried in silos. Business stakeholders find it near impossible to make data-driven decisions. It is top of mind for data and data leaders to give data access to business stakeholders. However, with so many disparate applications spread across the organization, it is a huge undertaking in creating a data platform for users to access data. With that, I'd like to open up a poll and ask the attendees to vote on the following poll. I'll give it about the next 30 seconds to close the poll, and we'll look at the results. The question is, what is your organization's biggest challenge in data accessibility? 1, disparate siloed data. 2, multiple integration tools. 3, data integrity. 4, limited resources to provide data access, or all of the above. All right, let's look at what the results are. Wow. Okay, so we've got 70% of the attendees clicking on all of the above. So obviously, disparate siloed data, multiple integration tools, data integrity, and limit resources to give people access to data are huge issues. So with that, I'd like to welcome Yuda, who's here today to talk to us about how he's able to build a data platform in a very short time frame. Yuda, over to you.
Hi, everyone. Sorry, I had to unmute myself. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for hosting me today. I really laughed out loud from the survey, mainly because from the poll, mainly because nobody marked too many integration tools as a problem. Mainly the problem is that there are no integration tools and so on. And that's probably what we're going to talk about today more than anything else. So I'm going to say a couple of minutes, spend a couple of minutes talking about who I am and my background. So we'll create some relationship here. My name is Yuda. I'm originally from Israel. I'm a father to 4 and a dog called Schnitzel. We've been here for 8 years in the United States of America. I'm a former Naval Academy, former Israeli Air Force. I was in Special Forces, and I've spent most of my tech career in startups, except for a little while in Microsoft and a little while as an executive in an insurance firm, Fortune 100 company. I've done a little bit of everything, but I'm a data guy through and through. I run my family the same way I run my teams, with a KPI-driven approach. And I've been in a couple of industries, from ad tech to fintech and insurance, like I've mentioned before, and in different sizes of companies. And maybe a couple of words of my previous company, which was, like I said, a Fortune 100, very much an enterprise, where the challenge was transformation, not just innovation, about how we move everybody to think faster. And right now, I'm working at a company called Quadpay. We are, if you guys are aware of the fintech industry, there's a brand new domain of it called payments, or buy now, pay later. And Quadpay has been crushing it in that domain, being one of the market leaders. We've started a couple of years ago, and we've been only accelerating since, with hundreds of percents of growth year over year. The company was acquired a few months ago by a public Australian company, and we are maintaining the velocity as we go with a good partner. That's it. I'm going to try to rush through things here. So with your permission, we can always come back to things in the question part of it. That's why I'm trying to rush through things, so we'll have enough time to do that. Next. So what I want to start with is kind of like walk you through what happened when I joined Quadpay about a year ago. And I'm going to put us back in time at a specific point, which is a month in, one guy in, which is just me, trying to wrap up a discovery phase, which is an insight by itself, which we're going to touch on later, the value of discovery. And here's the status as I saw it 1 month in. And I'm hoping some of this will resonate with you guys. It's the specific problem statement here. First of all, we had a challenge of the architecture. We were very much a run forward kind of a company. We were using ODS as operational data stores as the data warehouses. We were consuming our data from operational data stores that came with their own challenges. The second part, sorry, clicking on something here. Here we go. We saw a lot of dependencies between software engineering and data org coming to fruition as we mature the data organization, basically meaning that because of that dependency of ODSs and because of the knowledge, subject matter expertise around the data that lives within software engineering, there couldn't be fast iterations or fast sprints. Everything had to rely on knowledge, expertise, and actual coupling with the software engineering code base. Another challenge we saw is the treatment. This is kind of our core principle, all data, all the time. Treatment of data, internal data as the only data of the company, and even that partial part of it only. So part of the problem statement was about identifying that all internal data is important, having access to all of it at its most granular form, and adding the full picture, the missing vendor data, anything that any company that we interact with have some of our data. Data integrity issues, no big deal, but the fact that a lot of the data resides within ODSs means that it has its own gravity, rules of gravity, which means that it could be eventually consistent or has some disclaimers to it, which was a potential challenge to creating trust, which is mainly our main commodity as data people. So we identified the need to reconcile data with external sources and internally to make sure it's credible. Consumption patterns, even to some of the data like I've mentioned before that we did have access through ODSs, the consumption patterns basically were limited to SQL, and life, especially in a modern data platform, should not be limited to SQL. And then on top of this, or maybe the reason for the majority of this, is the startup life. This is very much the token startup, run fast, break things, and fall forward. This meant these were the challenges, but it also meant that the resources were scarce. And if you say you can do something in 6 months, the challenge was to do it in 2 months and with 1 person or 2 people. So that's kind of like how we saw things on the first month. I'm trying to describe this to put you all in the same shoes that I was in about a month in, which is, from my perspective, an awesome challenge to have. Okay, so fast forward 2 months later, what we've built. We built a data platform, and I'm trying to shy away from a diagram right now in order to kind of describe this passionately and not have people focus on the specific blocks. I love to say that everybody can draw 2 boxes and an arrow between them. It's about the implementation and the principles behind them, which we'll dive into right after this. But I'll try to run through a couple of the core things that we've delivered. First thing, we didn't deliver a database or a data warehouse, we delivered a platform. And the platform consisted of 2 main big components in the middle, a lake, a landing zone, basically a system of record that lands everything and does that at the most efficient way that relieves the stress from the source systems and doesn't have an impact to the ecosystem, and in a reliable way keeps data forever in an organized way. And then the second aspect of this is a data warehouse where we actually not just land the data, but onboard this, model it. We are using data vault methodologies. If you don't know what data vault is, I recommend a deep dive. Data vault methodologies in order to ultra normalize and break down siloed data and reassemble it according to the business needs. The main part of this platform was a UI-driven and a config-driven framework, which is Snaplogic. And then we, in addition, from day one, we built kind of like surrounding components that showed or are crucial for maturity, and it's better if you build them out on day one, which is monitoring, cataloging, and data quality. That's the skeleton. In terms of the data inside, all of our in-house resources, data sources, so CQRS, event stores, data that was very granular and event-driven, immutable data, all of our data from our vendors. Think about API-driven partners that are helping us run our business. We've done all of this behind the scenes, but maybe the most important point that I want to make as our goal line for the team to build a platform was the data product. I'm jumping out. The data product is the concept that we're bringing to every organization, which resonates with everybody in the company. Nobody cares how the sausage gets made. Nobody cares that it came from 17 different sources and contained different naming standards according to what an engineer decided 6 years ago. Everybody can understand what a data product is. Everybody can understand, and to ultra simplify what a data product is, it's a simple structure of 2, 3, 4, 5 tables that actually make sense if you read them out loud to any business owner. Everybody can understand customers table and orders table. And the idea is to create these data products for every business domain that we have in the company. The marketing gets their own data product, the finance get their own data product. And to some extent, there is a core data product that holds the majority of the KPIs for the company. If I touched before on the concept of life doesn't end with SQL, about the access layers, I won't dive into everything here, but I will say that the choices that we've made around the modeling techniques and around the specific tooling that we've put in place, mainly using Snaplogic for more than just data integration, but actually some sort of a managed self-service, was about analytics research, giving the people the ability to reconnect data or make new connections to the data and treating data as a big map versus a specific bundle. So analytics research is way up there, and data science as well, by building a lake and a data warehouse, kind of a hand-in-hand structure that makes sense in an organized way, and cataloging all of this. We gave the scientists the tools that they really wanted, which is access to the granular data in their own tooling, regardless of SQL. Nobody has to dump any data for them and so on. And this kind of connects also to the self-service capabilities. I won't go into the education, but I will say this is something we're very passionate about. We believe a data-driven company is a data-educated company. So starting from day one, communicating and transparently and making the data accessible, not just by giving somebody a username and password to the database, but actually telling people cool things about the data and new revelations and sharing everybody KPIs that have become substantial or interesting, and gamifying all of this, coupled with good documentation, have been landmarks of how we make things run faster, mainly because we constantly get feedback and know that we're heading in the right direction. This is, I can't see you guys, so I'm going to hope everybody's with me. Now, we went through the aha moment or understanding where we are in the discovery a month in. We went through what we've managed to build over a couple of months. I'm going to touch a little bit about the principles that we have as a team to make sure that you a lot of this is going to be captain obvious to the professionals in the room, but I just want to make sure you see how we see things, which is abide to the principles and make sure you have that list in front of you so you'll be able to not get sidetracked easily. So principles. One, discovery is important. Too many times we tend to go with what we've known before. I know what we need here. We need Hadoop. We're trying to solve, when you're a hammer, everything looks like a nail. Coming in with open-minded approach and identifying, interviewing business stakeholders, interviewing people on the ground and understanding what the actual issues are is critical. And this is not something that's being done at the beginning. It's constantly being done. Business first. A lot of the times building these platforms is handed to engineers. And speaking as an engineer, we love to dive into the actual implementation versus talk about what good looks like for the business and ask constantly, get buy-in on what we're going to deliver and how it's going to be meaningful for the business. Or else we are doing a lot of work to get minimum impact. And that's kind of like a leading principle of the 80-20. Try to do 80-20 in everything we do. MVP everything. MVP everything is kind of like to the 80-20. What's the bare minimum we can do to provide value? And we can play with the MVP as much as we want, as long as we stay away from tactical. AKA, don't just write a piece of script that runs on a Chrome tab once a day and gets the data. That's not fair. You got to build something that's scalable, lower the scope of the MVP, but make it sustainable forever. Scalability flavor. So everybody likes to talk about scalability. Think about it from day one is something that people obviously have adjusted for, but I'd like to talk about like the different flavors of scalability. The first bullet point is basically how we all think about it. Build something that we can easily press a button or even not press a button, would scale and be elastic enough to maintain load. That's given. When we talk about scalability in our team, we talk about a few different examples. I'll give you some of them now. One of them is that principle of all data all the time. If you're going to get something, even though you've done this through the concept of ask the business first, even though you are adjusting in your mind to an MVP approach, 9 times out of 10 from our experience, might as well land the entire data. And that here comes that structure of that lake where we just land data in a data warehouse where we have to spend time knowing what we have, ELT versus ETL. Land all of the data would usually cost you almost nothing for every new source. So get all data all the time. That's scalability in terms of the second and third and fourth iteration that you're going to have after that MVP. Speed. Logic in the app, data in the data warehouse. From day one, put everything in one place, especially if you if you've done your research and you've figured out what's your integration tool. If you trust it, put everything in one place. It's scalable that way. You can reuse things. You can clearly understand and improve things. You can build like building blocks one on top of the other. Modular architecture is a fickle thing. Design scalability is basically what I'm talking about. Figure out things or architecture. Don't commit to a vendor that you can't replace tomorrow. Obviously, that's easier said than done. But a good example would be we have easy access and go to market pretty quickly with Azure SQL Server or with let's say with Azure SQL Server. Makes total sense. Let's run with it now, but let's make sure all of our code and all of our logic is in the app. So when we want to replace it, it's a one-stop shop. We don't put anything in stored procedures. We don't commit to something proprietary, and we can replace it tomorrow with something that's that makes more sense as the business grows. That's it. One last principle, like I said before, educate and communicate to everyone. We want to keep shouting, this is what we're doing, this is what we're doing, so we can get feedback of this doesn't make sense, so we can calibrate constantly. And then the last thing, I kind of alluded to it, is to get a flexible framework to speed things up. When I say keep the logic in the app, when I say build something that's that's going to enable agility and acceleration. I'm mainly talking about picking a good partner to serve as the brain or the heart of this entire operation, which is the data integration framework, which is for us has been repeatedly Snaplogic. And now is probably the time to mention that I'm a third-time Snaplogic buyer. And I know this is kind of like, might sound like the point that I've made before when we come into a new company and we bring what we knew before. But in every company, whether it was the enterprise that was 162 years old or a company that's barely 2 years old, we went through the diligence of a paper exercise and a full-blown POC, comparing 15 different vendors and measuring what makes most sense for our team, according to our principle and according to what we need to deliver. Next. So Snaplogic is a differentiator. We've built all of, obviously with a lot of asterisks and disclaimers, we've built all of the things that you saw me describe as what we've built over the course of 2 months with 2 guys. How did we do that? Is because we picked a good data integration tool to serve as an accelerator. It's a differentiator, especially if you know the tool. And here are some of the considerations. I took a table that had score and weight, so I wanted to fill that out. But for us, these are the things that basically propagated everything to the top. The time to market has been crucial, and that goes to both the delivery aspect of things, as everybody think through this, but also the partnership, the signing a contract, the getting something up and running, and the support has been substantial. So the time to market includes all of that. Standardization and reusability. Having a UI-driven tool, having the structure that exists already in Snaplogic and building on top of it contributed to standardization and reusability of tools again and again, snaps, custom snaps, and pipelines completely again and again, which accelerated things dramatically. Think about onboarding 15 different API vendors. Accessibility and transparency. This goes to anybody in the engineering team can understand Snaplogic pretty quickly, but it's also about anybody, period, can understand Snaplogic. We can show everybody, it shows transparency, it shows how we think through things. We can literally whiteboard with somebody in the business layer what we're building. Connectability. A moment of honesty. One of the things that we like the most about Snaplogic is how hackable it is for us, meaning the snaps, custom snap, or let's say the standard snaps in packages are great, but we found opportunities to go like, we can do better, and we can write a piece of code that in Java or whatever language we love at that moment, and make things maybe run a little bit faster for that specific snap. And that's what we love about Snaplogic. And when I'm bringing this up here in terms of connectability, I also talk about how easy it is to connect to Snaplogic through the APIs for the entire ecosystem, from our data cataloging tool to our monitoring tool to everything, even to our streamlined documentation. So that's connectability. And the last thing, I've kind of touched on it, but I'll mention it again because it's worth it. The business partnership. Having somebody that answers an email within, I don't want to commit Snaplogic to anything, but really quickly, having a partner that says, I got you, let me figure that out. Looking at release notes and seeing that the most important bugs are getting taken care of and the new features actually align with what we think is really important is priceless. And those are the things that we consider the most when we pick this. And that has been the accelerator and the differentiator for us in managing to deliver things fast and iterate through them quickly. I think this is it. We're at Ask Me Anything mode.
Thanks, Yuda. So for all the attendees, if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A chat box. And we'll go through the questions. So Yuda, there are some questions over to you. So there's a question asking, how are you leveraging repeatable code and connectability? Is that related to, what the general session earlier in the event, is that part of like the enterprise automation? So really, how are you leveraging repeatable code, connectability from Snaplogic?
So I'll do you one better. Obviously, in terms of repeatable code, if we write a good downloader pipeline for, and I'm oversimplifying things, so I'm hoping that I'll still hit the spot here. But like if we're building a downloader pipeline to work with we're a modern company working with modern business partners, vendors. If we're running a downloader that is applicable for a company like Stripe, it would probably be applicable for a ton of other companies. Having that entire pipeline being repeatable and even the components within it being repeatable makes such a huge difference in terms of like when somebody brings you in as the stakeholder and says, how long would it take you to onboard these 15 vendors that we have? And you have the confidence in saying like, my guys can copy paste until the cows come home, don't worry about it. And focus on the credibility of the data integrity, instead of focusing on, we need to write the codes that will actually work. So we've seen that as an important answer to this question. But the other aspect of it, which is what I said, I'll do you one better, we saw repeatable code being used even at the scientist domain. People that have wrote their own pipelines to clean the data from the lake, organize it and dump it ready for training or ready for analysis, have been sharing this between teams and have gotten to a point where it accelerated multiple people because of quote unquote repeatable code.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
I hope that answered that.
Thanks, Yuda. The second question I have is, you mentioned MVP first and replace later. Wouldn't that be costly and increase, tech debt over time? And how has Snaplogic helped in that regard?
Okay, yeah. So we're mixing two things, MVP first and modular architecture. So MVP first, I implore you guys to like what I said is like MVP, but don't do tactical. Do not just say, okay, I'll write whatever piece of code Joey wants to write today, so we'll get the data so we can have a win on the business layer. That's the point of having, and now I'm connecting this to Snaplogic, having an accelerator to do MVP in a way that makes sense and is repeatable versus just a piece of code that we'll have to refactor tomorrow because it won't make sense in a bigger architecture. So MVP first basically means get a win, but don't get a win at the cost of a future loss. Does that I hope that makes sense.
Absolutely, yes. Okay, I've got a final question here. So for companies who are starting out on building a data platform, where do you recommend starting first? By use case, by department needs, just, high level type of, where should one start?
So I think it depends on the maturity of the company. A lot of the time, if I'll give you the basic simple answer, which is go talk to the business and get what's the most important thing to get and have that as the MVP, that would be a misservice or disservice. Realistically, a lot of the times we're the data people. The business doesn't have the maturity or has a low bar of asking us what they want.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of the times we have to be the adults in the room, do our homework, do the discovery, connect with the analytics team more than anybody else, measure the metrics that are currently being used, and shape what that first goal would look like. What's the most valuable data that we can onboard to our new architecture, which will kind of go hand in hand to provide value on day one. There's nothing more disappointing to the business than we kicked off a project 6 months ago. They're giving us updates on a monthly basis that they're onboarding data. And what they've provided is this metric about X that we don't really care about. And for the things that we are now getting an appetite to get, it's going to take them another 6 months to onboard the data because they were misfocused. So identify with the business what they need and help and guide them according to the maturity level and set your own bar.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Yuda. If you can, click on the next slide, I wanted to, wrap up this session and talk about, there are resources for the attendees beyond this summit. First and foremost, we have our Snaplogic community where we have a lot of topics for Snaplogic users to engage with other users as well in terms of, how to really reap benefits and getting the most out of using Snaplogic. We also have monthly, weekly events from, one-on-one training workshops, and there are, they do fill out fast. So please be sure to check them out. And if you don't have access to Snaplogic yet, and you're considering of, trying out Snaplogic, we also have a free trial that you can sign up and use it immediately. And if you can go on to the next slide, please fill out a survey. We will send out a post-event survey so you can, provide feedback. We'd love to get your feedback so that we can improve on our future events and our content as well. All right. Thank you, attendees.
Can I add one more resource? I'm a resource also. There's nothing better than an actual reference or like somebody to throw some ideas. I'm very informal. You guys can hit me up on LinkedIn, ask any question that you want. I'm glad to give you my honest, I'd be happy to give you my honest feedback.
Thank you, Yuda. Thank you for today's session.
Anytime.
All right. Thank you, everyone.